about 14 to 15 trillion dollars worth market now globally.
Interesting.
And guess what, Nigeria?
Good evening, Africa. Good evening to the children of the sun, the guardians of the Nile, the defenders of dignity, the builders of the next civilization. Tonight, I do not come to you with ordinary news. I do not sit behind this desk simply to read headlines and statistics. I come to you as a witness, a messenger, a voice for the revolution that is unfolding in silence, in soil, in strategy, and in spirit. This is not the Africa they imagined. This is not the Africa they described in their newspapers, their think tanks, their documentaries narrated by voices that never lived here. No, this Africa is different. She's no longer the bruised, begging daughter of colonial conquest. She's a lioness awake, alert, and unchained. And tonight I invite I urge you to open your eyes wide and listen closely, because something is happening. The drums are beating louder, the earth is shifting under our feet, the continent is speaking and, this time, she refuses to whisper. Across the hills of Kissi, the deserts of Timbuktu, the streets of Accra, and the factories of Harare, a new rhythm is pulsing. A rhythm of ownership, a rhythm of resistance, a rhythm of return. Young Africans are leaving the slums, not in defeat, but in defiance to build, to plant, to reclaim. Farmers who once sold their crops for pennies are now exporting to Paris, Berlin, Tokyo, and doing it on their own terms. Artisans who once begged for recognition are now designing products that sit on shelves next to Gucci and Versace, proudly stamped, made in Africa. And the youth, oh, the youth. The most underestimated force in modern history are no longer running away from the continent. They're running toward it, with laptops, with solar panels, with dreams as wide as Lake Victoria and as unstoppable as the Congo River. They said Africa was too broken to fix, too poor to lead, too divided to rise, too late to matter. But the joke is on them now, because Africa is not late, she is timeless. Africa is not poor, she is plundered, and she is no longer waiting for permission to be great. I know, some of you still doubt, some of you have grown tired. You've seen the corruption, the lies, the promises unfulfilled. You've watched foreign powers play chess with our futures, while our leaders bowed and signed away the birthright of generations. You've cried watching children cross deserts for crumbs. You've wondered if hope is a fantasy. But tonight I tell you with fire in my voice and certainty in my chest, hope is not dead. It was only buried. And now it is being unearthed by the very hands they tried to break. We are not victims of history. We are authors of tomorrow, and that tomorrow is not a faraway dream, it is forming in real time. In Guinea, young women are leading mining cooperatives, taking control of their own resources. In Niger, solar energy is electrifying. Entire villages without a single cent of European aid. In Senegal, coding academies are teaching children in Wolof and French to design apps used in Canada and South Korea. In Burkina Faso, President Ibrahim has redefined what courage and leadership look like, facing down giants without blinking, and proving that true sovereignty is not negotiated, it is taken. All across Africa, the tables are turning, the narrative is cracking. And those who once laughed at our potential are now panicking at our progress. They built walls, but we grew wings. They set traps, but we studied maps. They planted confusion, but we harvested clarity. And now they come back not to help, but to catch up. They called it a third world. We call it the first civilization. They called us underdeveloped. We call ourselves rising. They called it impossible. We just call it African. And so tonight, this broadcast is not for entertainment. It is not for empty outrage. It is a call to arms, not with weapons, but with wisdom. Not with fear, but with fire. Whether you're in Lagos or Lusaka, Bujumbura or Bamako, this is your moment. No more waiting. No more begging. No more looking up to those who look down on us. This is our time. Our turn. Our truth. Tonight we begin the story they never wanted told, the story of a continent refusing to die. A continent refusing to sell her soul. A continent choosing wealth with dignity, not riches in chains. Africa, wake up. The sun has never stopped rising. It is we who forgot to open our eyes. But now, we see. Stay with us, because what comes next will shake the roots of the global economy, disrupt the food systems of Europe, and reveal how a simple tree born of African soil is making our farmers rich and forcing the world to admit Africa was never behind. She was simply waiting for the right moment, and that moment is now.
Welcome to Talk of Africa 360, your source for insightful news, analysis, and thoughtful commentary. If you value informed perspectives and fact-based reporting, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss an update. Disclaimer: the content on this channel is based on reliable public sources and credible online information. It is intended strictly for educational and analytical purposes. We do not promote or endorse political violence, hate speech, or any form of discrimination. Our goal is to inform, not to inflame. Thanks for being here. Let's stay informed together.
Ladies and gentlemen, Africans at home and in the diaspora, brothers and sisters of the soil, this is not merely another economic report. This is not a segment buried in the financial section of global news. What I am about to deliver today is a seismic shift, a green revolution, and a tectonic movement in global food systems, with Africa not as a spectator, but as the main stage. What started quietly on the farms of Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, and Ethiopia has now grown into a multi-billion-dollar tidal wave shaking the entire European food market to its core. Yes, Africa's avocado exports have exploded by a jaw-dropping 300% in just 3 years. And now, European supermarket chains are in a panic, scrambling, begging, and lining up for contracts with African suppliers. You heard that correctly. Africa, once treated as a mere dumping ground for expired food and rejected fruits, has now become the prime exporter of what is being called green gold on the world market. From Nairobi to Accra, Lusaka to Lilongwe, farmers are watching their lives transform, their bank accounts rise, and their communities flourish, all because of one fruit. Cultivated with pride, exported with purpose, and harvested not just from the soil, but from a deeper vision of African self-reliance and prosperity. This is not a coincidence. This is not luck. This is strategy. This is resilience. This is African farmers rising with power and precision. 3 years ago, the world was distracted by political crises, wars, and pandemics. But on the hills of Mount Meru in Tanzania, something was quietly growing. On the slopes of Mount Kenya, farmers began organizing. On the volcanic soil of Rwanda and the plains of Malawi, youth began planting avocado trees in droves, not as a gamble, but as a calculated move. While the West debated trade wars, African agronomists studied the global food demand curve. And what did they see? That avocados were on the rise. The world had developed an appetite for healthy fats. Global demand skyrocketed, and Europe was hungry. At first, they didn't take Africa seriously. European buyers were comfortable sourcing from Peru, Mexico, and Chile. But then, reality hit. Droughts plagued Latin America. Transportation costs soared. Supply chains collapsed. And suddenly, they looked toward Africa, and what they saw shocked them. African avocados were not only cheaper, but fresher, more nutritious, closer in distance, and grown without synthetic pesticides. They were naturally organic, often hand-picked, and transported in under 8 hours to European markets. Overnight, supermarket executives in Berlin, Paris, Madrid, and Amsterdam started calling. Their emails flooded with requests. Their shelves grew empty, and their customers asked, "Where are the avocados?" The answer came in bold letters: Africa. But let's take a step back. This did not happen by accident. In 2022, a quiet but powerful coalition of African agricultural cooperatives launched what would later be called the Avocado Continental Initiative. From rural villages to national capitals, farmers, ministers, logistics companies, and digital platforms began working together to break the chains of middlemen exploitation. They created cooperative storage facilities. They built cold chain transport systems. And most importantly, they launched the Pan-African Avocado Exchange, a digital marketplace that allowed European buyers to connect directly with African growers, eliminating unnecessary brokers and ensuring farmers got paid their worth. For the first time in modern history, an African agricultural product bypassed the clause of exploitative pricing. Farmers were not begging for scraps. They were setting the terms. One farmer from Nakuru, Kenya, put it plainly: "They used to pay us 5 shillings for one avocado. Now we export directly and earn 50. I built my home. My children go to school. I drive a truck. All because I believed in the tree." His story is echoed by thousands. In Rwanda, female-led cooperatives took charge. In Ghana, former cocoa farmers, frustrated with price volatility, switched to avocados. In Zambia, youth agricultural boot camps taught sustainable farming and avocado export logistics. The revolution was not televised, it was rooted. And now, it has burst forth in full bloom. Africa is not just exporting fruit, it's exporting dignity. And what happened next startled the European market. In just 3 years, Africa's avocado production jumped from 230,000 metric tons to over 700,000. Kenya became the third largest exporter of avocados globally. Tanzania's Kilimanjaro region alone exported 52,000 tons in the last season. Ethiopia built 3 new avocado processing plants. South Africa, not to be left behind, launched its Green Horizon project, targeting €1 billion in annual avocado exports by 2027. European supermarkets were caught off guard. The fruit sections of Tesco, Carrefour, Lidl, and Albert Heijn began filling up with avocados marked product of Africa. And the consumers noticed something else. The African avocados tasted better, richer, creamier. They stayed fresh longer. There were fewer complaints. And there was something else, something invisible but deeply felt, the pride of origin. African branding took a bold new step. Labels weren't generic. They were proudly Pan-African. Stickers read, "Harvested in Africa by African hands. From our soil to your table. Support African prosperity." And customers responded. Sales doubled, then tripled. Suddenly, Europe needed Africa more than Africa needed Europe. Contracts began flooding in, not just for avocados, but for farming partnerships, technology transfers, organic certification schemes. European governments who once lectured Africa on development began seeking green deals. African trade ministers negotiated hard. They demanded equity, fair pricing, and environmental respect. And to everyone's surprise, Europe said yes. But don't be mistaken, this is not just about trade. This is about sovereignty. For far too long, Africa has been locked into a cycle of raw exports and finished imports. We grew coffee, they sold lattes. We grew cocoa, they sold chocolate. But with avocados, something different emerged. Africa began processing. We didn't just export fruit. We exported oil, cosmetics, soaps, and even avocado flour. African brands began showing up in European health stores, proudly Black-owned, ethically sourced, and continentally processed. This wasn't just economic growth. This was economic awakening. Schools began teaching agribusiness models. Universities opened up departments focused solely on avocado value chains. Youth who once ran to Europe now returned home to invest. One 27-year-old Burundian tech graduate created an app that connects smallholder farmers with refrigerated trucks in real time. Another Ghanaian innovator created an avocado-based protein shake now sold in Sweden. This is the African Renaissance, and it's green. But there's another part of this story, one the West does not want to tell. As African avocado exports exploded, Western food giants tried to buy in. Corporations tried to acquire land. Some tried to undercut African prices. Others sought to buy African cooperatives and rebrand them under European names. But this time, the answer was no. In Burkina Faso, when a French company offered to buy 15,000 hectares of avocado farmland, the response from the farmers was simple: "This land feeds our people, not your profits." In Malawi, when a major European food distributor tried to purchase controlling shares in an avocado processing firm, the African Development Bank intervened, offering zero-interest loans to keep the company in African hands. This is more than economics. This is a battle for narrative. Africa is not rising because the West gave permission. Africa is rising because Africans have stopped waiting. The avocado revolution proves that with the right crop, the right strategy, and the right mindset, Africa can shift global markets. It can dictate terms. It can lead. So the question is not whether Africa can feed the world. It is whether the world is ready for an Africa that feeds itself first. From the dirt roads of Morogoro to the ports of Mombasa, from the highlands of Nyungwe to the markets of Abidjan, the avocado trees are still growing. The roots are spreading. The money is flowing, not into foreign accounts, but into village savings groups, community banks, and mobile wallets. A 300% increase in 3 years. And we've only just begun. This is not a dream. This is the new African economy. So to every African youth watching this, plant. To every farmer listening, organize. To every diaspora member wondering what to invest in, look home. The tree that changes your life might already be growing. The green gold rush is real. And this time, it belongs to Africa.
As reactions continue to pour in from across the continent, one thing is clear. Africa is demanding respect, sovereignty, and accountability. Was this just a diplomatic misstep or a deeper sign of shifting global alliances? We'll be watching closely. If you found this story important, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real, unfiltered African news. This is Talk of Africa 360, telling the stories that matter.